Hello. So in this video, we're going to talk about the poetry of Hahm Dong-seon, whom I'm reading out of Three Poets of Modern Korea. Now, I pronounced his name Hahm Dong-seon. I don't know if that's right, because, interestingly enough, so when I don't know how someone's name is pronounced, an author's name or whatever it is, I tend to try and find something on the YouTube machine, right? I tend to try and find an instance where someone who I assume knows how it's pronounced is saying it. I could not find any YouTube video about Hahm Dong-seon. I Googled it. I couldn't find any references to him. He is, according to this collection, a published poet. He's got multiple books, including Short Time, Long Story, Thinking of Home from a Distance, and Colony. He's an emeritus professor now from Chungang University in Seoul. I could not find any references to him online, which I find extremely odd. My assumption is that the translators of this book, Yoon Jung-yul and James Kimbrell, have spelled his name in a slightly unusual way. That's the only thing I can think of. I'm assuming that they did not just make somebody up and stick random poems in here. But it's a very interesting situation nonetheless. Normally with a poet, especially a published poet, somebody who's fairly well known and influential, you will find references to them online. Maybe I just did a shitty job searching. It's possible. But Hahm is an interesting poet because he has a relatively traditional style in a very modern context that's really shaped by his personal history having been displaced by the Korean War. Because Ham's native village, let me see if I can immediately find the name of it, Yongbak, was below the 38th parallel. But at the end of the Korean War, it was, I guess, it became part of the North, and so he was never able to actually return home. And so that plays a big part in his poetry. There's a lot of nature imagery, a lot of imagery related to the working life of people in Korea. And there is this sense, this sort of pervasive sense of loss and longing for home, a home that he cannot return to. And so you'll see this as I sort of read some of the poems to you. So the first one I want to read is called Full Moon. As legend would have it, the nettle's branches slant toward wind, and its fruits surround the tutelary shrine. My mother, wearing white so white that it rubs out the darkness, makes her way to the shrine, carrying the ripe moon like a water jar on top of her head. Each time she prays, she spills water, and her prayers wash over every crag and nook of this land possessed by evil spirits. Still, her youngest son, who fled from the war, has not yet been seen. The wormwood grows head high and taller, and ever since a voice spoke through the shaman and said, "This is all your fault. Beneath each full moon, my mother lights a candle." So again, there's this sense of loss, this sense of sort of deprivation, tied to the experience of the Korean War and being displaced from their home. Another one that I want to read you is a rough sketch of autumn. Shadows of the bluish-black pine forest harbor the trestle, the field of Ulilela, and graze along the first footholds of the mountain. A dragonfly threaded the curved creek bank, seems stunned by the shadows and lights on a cosmos that blooms in a tilt as though counting on the wind to come back again. At the gates of the village, the long sound of autumn comes in a quaver, the throat notes of someone singing pansori. Over a grandmother's stooped shoulders, the sun in autumn, whether it wants to or not, disappears as soon as it nears the horizon. In my heart, a parched leaf is already sculling past. So again, this use of nature imagery is actually really, really traditional in Korean poetry and East Asian poetry. It has a long history in East Asian poetry, going back thousands of years. It's and again, for a lot of this is sort of tied to these experiences of loss, of longing, of nostalgia, of deprivation, etc., etc. And so that's a modernization, in a sense, of this very old form, very old thematic concern in Korean or East Asian poetry. Another poem I want to read you. Journal in Jumunjin. As if painted with a thick brush, the horizon goes down to dusk, and night begins to settle in the empty shoreline fields. My hometown, like the stars just blinking on, is somewhere on the other side of a wide river, more sensation, more memory than town. The raw fish restaurant sways with the dizzy give and take of the ocean waves. The lights from docked fishing boats are doubled in my cup of rice wine. I drink, and though I will soon quit this work, I haven't yet looked enough through the train window at the trees and fields slipping out of eyeshot. A handful of wind rises, hauled away by night's dark skirt. But again, that sense of loss, that sense of longing, that sense of displacement. And I think this poem is really evocative of that sensation. Because this is one of the weird things about someone like Hahm, who came from a place that ended up just on the other side of the border, is supposedly, according to the editors of this collection, like he could stand on a particular hill and see the village that he was born in, but he could not visit it. So there is this sort of sense of always being separated from that home, that origin point. The last one I want to read you is called Fisherman's Morning, and this is one that's again more. It's fascinated with nature imagery, but it ties you to a kind of working world of Korean culture. So this is Fisherman's Morning. When morning first steps down through the darkness, and the hour is already muggy with dew, in this fishing village entire years gather and stand inches apart. When the sky is no larger than a bean, than an aperture in the instant after the picture, with a great motion, the fishermen are led by fishing nets. It may be true that summer has a skin slick as low-tide seawater, but what better now than a cigarette, while it dawns on me that each fisherman's stride is the single fact, is the beginning and the end of this life and this work. So again, Hahm Dong-seon, very, very interesting poet. I think in the introduction here, they sort of compare him to Robert Frost, and I think that's a fair comparison. The use of nature poetry, the use of sort of working class people, the exploration of identity, home, loss, etc., etc. All of that is there and more.